Sanibonani ninjani. To those who don't understand Siswati, welcome back. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to say, can we do the notification button? Can we subscribe? The reason we are doing this so that we can reach people who need to see this content. Okay, before we get to this, I'd like to acknowledge the reason, the purpose why we are doing this. For me, it's not even about, it's not clout, but it's about what I would call purpose. For me, this is a calling, and I believe it's ministry to those that need to hear this. And the reason I'm narrating my story, being very descriptive and detailed, is the fact that I understand how people connect with other people. People connect with real life experiences. I could give you content on the 5 tips of healing, but it will not speak to you. What will speak to you is reflecting your story in my story, seeing yourself in my story. So this is why I'm narrating the different experiences, the different things that happened in all the traumas that I suffered. And also, this is not coming from a place, remember, the series is about heal. It's about being healed and whole. What I love is that my healing journey has started. I'm at a place where I've healed, where I've dealt with most of the things that I overcame, and that forced me to get into a place of being vulnerable. At first, I was vulnerable with myself. I was able to identify what was going on with me, within me, and I spoke that out. Now I'm doing it for the one who feels so alone, because when we're going through these things, we always think you're the only one. But this is to say you're not the only one. You're not the only one, and your situation is not unique. Somebody has been through it, somebody is still going to go through it, and somebody has overcame it, he has risen from it. And, I'm sitting here speaking from a place of complete wholeness, I'm at peace. I was able to forgive myself. I was able to even forgive others that contributed to my brokenness state. So this is not to shame anyone. This is not to shame anyone. And these conversations, they are very, these are the hard conversations that we're not having. These are the conversations we feel like we'd rather not have. These are the conversations that we cringe when we talk about them, but they need to be spoken out. Being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness. It actually reveals strength in you, because if we don't talk about these things, they'll continue happening in the dark places. If we hide them, they're not going to be exposed, and there's no way we can then try and minimize them to nothing. We won't be confronting them, we won't engage them, and people won't get help. So what you're going to see or hear me speak about are the traumas that I went through, and it's going to be vivid. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm ready to be naked for somebody to get help. You know, I'm giving this thing a language, you know, because other people know they are in this position, but they just don't have language to articulate it. They don't have the strength, you know, and that is why I'm saying I'm here to talk about it. This is not to shame anybody. This is not to settle score. No, I'm at a place where I've dealt with all of that. I'm at peace. I'm okay. So this is what we're going to be doing in the events that I'm going to be talking about. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be yet again and to meet you yet again. So before we get any further, I just want to get into the most important part. I want to acknowledge why I'm here. I'm not here in my own ability. For me, this is not even what people would call a side hustle or something on the side. I'm here because I was convicted to being here. I'm here as a voice. God is using me, and it took a lot of courage to get to this place. The Holy Spirit really had to work in me to even believe that I could be in this platform, to even speak, you know, because not in my wildest dreams I ever thought I could be doing something like this. But I just want to acknowledge the Holy Spirit, and yeah, it's the only reason that I'm doing this. So what we're doing today, we're going back to telling my story. If you've watched the previous episodes, they were talking about my life experiences. So now I'm gonna talk about from the time after I got married. So that's where I'm gonna take off from and really tell it like it is. Yeah, from the things that I recall from the previous episodes, you would just pick or tell how I got married, you know. So now I'm married. I'm a wife, and my expectations obviously were that of being in the phase of a honeymoon. So that's what I anticipated. That's what I expected. Especially because I thought this could be a good sign for us, me and my husband. You know, I thought he had grown to be a man, from a boy to be a man. I thought he had left all the issues that were going on in the relationship that I picked, and I wanted to leave the relationship because of. That's what I anticipated. Okay, unfortunately, I didn't experience what was supposed to be a honeymoon phase. You know, at first I thought I wasn't seeing clearly, but he was just not present. He was just not present. To me, it seemed as if marriage was not even in his head, you know. It felt like it didn't come naturally because of what was happening, you know. My expectations were that it was going to be a honeymoon phase where we bond as a married couple, you know, where we have those intimate moments, where we have those connections between a husband and a wife, as you would expect. But what was happening is that he was staying out with friends very late. I just didn't feel the honeymoon phase, you know, and it really, really, really messed up my head. It frustrated me, you know, because I wasn't expecting that, you know. I wasn't expecting that, and part of me had somehow forgiven him, you know, and thought things would work out for the better. But that was not the case. So what was happening? There was a lot. I remember one time, just after, because we got married in October, December, we went for a family vacation. We decided to spend Christmas away from our home country. We traveled to Botswana, and what had happened there, we found out that I conceived between the time I was married. I think when we went to Botswana for the Christmas holidays, I was probably 2 months pregnant between there. So there was a lot of strain. There was a lot of strain because we were just not connecting. And I kept on, he felt like I was nagging, but I really wanted to define our relationship. I wanted us to have those conversations, you know, but he was just not available. He was emotionally unavailable, physically unavailable. I felt alone. I felt cold, you know. So when we took that trip, I thought that was another chance for us to bond. But that didn't happen. Instead, I didn't feel okay during the trip. So I decided that when I come back, I need to go see the doctor because I wasn't feeling okay. I think I had an intuition that something was wrong with me, you know. Oh, another red sign that really said danger. I realized I had started spotting, and when you're pregnant, you're not supposed to be spotting, not at all. So I knew I had to see the doctor when we came back. So when we came back, first thing, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd of January, I went to see the doctor, and yeah, they made me run so many tests, so many scans. Eventually, they told me that I had a miscarriage, you know. I didn't expect that, but I could understand because I used to cry myself to sleep, you know. I just couldn't understand what was going on because in my mind I was like, this is the time when everything is supposed to be perfect. And again, I also want to acknowledge that I think one of my worst fears was that I wasn't living my fairy tale dream. Because remember, I think I've mentioned this before in the previous episodes, that ever since I suffered the first intense traumatic experience in my life when I fell pregnant as a teenager, I somehow wanted to fix my life, you know, and part of that was getting married, you know, because I wanted to hide the shame that I carried, you know. So I think a lot of it came from being validated by people, because when I fell pregnant, there was a sense of me that died. I felt my low esteem it kind of went down, my self-sense and worth. You know, I didn't feel like I was valuable enough. you know. So I did all of that to be validated by people. So I thought if we got married, if we start our family, it would erase what I was trying to fix. Obviously, you know, when you're carrying that much baggage, when you're carrying that much pain and trauma, and you are not processing it, the cycle becomes vicious, because you will move on with life on a broken state. So that is what was happening to me. So now, yeah, I could sense that it's not happening. My fairy tale dream is not happening. The husband is just not there. So I tell him the news, you know. So I remember I had to be admitted for an urgent surgery, because what happened was, you know, what happens with a miscarriage is that your uterus opened, but in my case, it didn't open. So it was a case that needed to be investigated by a gynae. So I was booked into the clinic so that my gynae could really study my case, you know. Yeah, I was put on bed rest. And then I remember asking my gynae, you know, I was like, what do you think caused my miscarriage? He said, you know, it varies, but in some instances, it's stress related, you know. I knew, because yeah, I was so much under distress in that time. I even forgot that I was married. I was busy questioning what was happening, you know, and I couldn't have answers. I was frustrated, and there was no one to really articulate what was going on, you know. So okay, we find out. I was admitted to the clinic, and then I was discharged, you know. Then again I went back. That by the grace of God, somehow, while I was still in bed rest, yeah, what the doctors were waiting for happened, and yeah, I was treated and I was discharged. So this is the second traumatic experience that was taking place now. And it was happening closely together from the time I got married to the time I conceived to the time I lost my baby. So it was all happened in a space of 4 months, if not 3 months, 4 months to 5 months. So now, again, I think it was a tendency with me now. I didn't pause. I didn't process the pain. I just went with emotions, you know. I didn't really have time to grieve, have time to moan, you know. I'm trying to even remember. One thing I was praying for at the time was that, God help me, I don't want to be bitter, you know, because a part of me was like, I wanted to blame somebody for what was happening, him in particular, you know, but I was praying against that. I was like, Lord, help me not to be bitter. The problem with that, even though I wasn't bitter, but I didn't acknowledge my emotions, you know. So life went on. Life went on as usual. You know, when you are married, you kind of see through. So we lived our life and hoping we would heal from that and move on. But before I knew it, there was another scandal. It was either an affair, lies, like there's so many things that were happening in that marriage that were not pleasant at all. To a point where I felt like slowly but surely it was changing who I am, you know, as a person, because I was confused. Because one thing I was told, which now I know is abuse, every time I wanted to address an issue, I was told I was nagging, you know. Every time I wanted that line of communication open, it was like, don't you ever get tired of talking? It seems like you talk too much. I was really confused. Because I couldn't understand what submission was, you know. And again, I think also I was codependent on him, you know, because I was running from my own baggage. I thought having him would probably fill the empty void in my, I don't know, there's something that was not there was something that was just not making sense with me, you know. I couldn't put a finger on it. So now I was accused of nagging. And I think a part of me died, you know, because now I didn't know when to talk, you know. I didn't know how to even address the issues that we had. Sometimes they will spill over because now I was furious, I was angry, you know. A lot was happening.